Vocabulary. Members of society. Члени суспільства.
The rich.
Багатії, багаті люди. Зверніть увагу, тут ми з вами будуємо із прикметника багатий. Ми будуємо іменник the rich, багатії. Багатий, багатії. Rich, the rich.
The poor.
Бідні люди.
The young.
Молодь, молоді люди.
The blind.
Сліпі люди.
The homeless.
Бездомні люди.
The elderly.
Літні люди.
The unemployed.
Безробітні люди.
The disabled.
Інваліди. And now we are going to listen to 4 people talking about different things. And we will decide which group does each belong to.
Pete, I lost my job 6 months ago because the company I worked for went bankrupt and had to close down. I've been looking everywhere for another place to work, in the newspapers, online. I even go around personally to businesses and leave my CV with them. So far, though, nothing. I hope something comes along soon.
Sandy.
Since my car accident, when I injured both legs, I've had to learn to get around in a wheelchair. I've been having physical therapy for 3 months now, and I'm told there's a good chance I will walk again. Meanwhile, I try to stay cheerful. Most people are very kind, helping me get onto buses and up ramps and that sort of thing.
Anne.
Accepting the fact that I've lost my sight was difficult. I've always hated the idea of relying on others to help me get around. You feel such a burden. Now I've just bought the most wonderful dog. He's a marvellous companion and never leaves my side. When we go out together, he guides me safely across the road without bumping into anyone.
But Celia and I got engaged last month, and I gave her a huge gold and diamond ring. Now we're looking for a house to buy. Celia really wants something with a swimming pool and stables for the horses. So long as we find something by next June, we're getting married then. After that, I've booked a luxury cruise on the French Riviera for our honeymoon.
Okay, so Pete is unemployed. Pete безробітний. What about Sandy?
Since my car accident, when I injured both legs, I've had to learn to get around in a wheelchair.
So Sandy is disabled. What about Anne?
Accepting the fact that I've lost my sight was difficult.
So Anne has lost her sight and she is blind.
I've booked a luxury cruise on the French Riviera for our honeymoon.
So he is talking about honeymoon, медовий місяць. So he is rich to have a honeymoon. Yes? Okay, let's go further. And now we are going to listen to the text and then you will read it.
A day in the shoes of. The city can be an unfriendly place at the best of times. Imagine then how it might feel for the elderly or the homeless, people who are often marginalized by the rest of society. So, to find out what it's really like to be in someone else's shoes, 2 reporters went undercover. One as an 80-year-old and another as a homeless person. The results were eye-opening. An Elderly Lady by Tracy Bond.
Turning 25-year-old me into an 80-year-old was no easy task. With the help of a makeup artist, I had to be covered with layers of prosthetic makeup. After putting on a shabby coat and holding tightly onto a walking stick, my transformation was complete and very convincing. Then it was time to set out to see how the world would react. Making sure that my voice sounded old and weak, I immediately tried to make small talk on the bus with the young woman sitting next to me. She stared straight ahead. She might not have heard, I thought. I tried again. But it was quite clear that the woman didn't want to talk to a chatty senior citizen. Then it was time for some shopping. At my favourite makeup counter, where the assistant usually laughs and jokes with me, she looked as if she couldn't wait to get rid of me. Later, in a music shop, my request for some CDs was met with laughter from sales assistants, who couldn't believe an 80-year-old was interested in the latest chart hits. I felt incredibly embarrassed and lonely, as if nothing about me was important, except that I was old. All day, only one person seemed to want to chat to me, a homeless man. He too was invisible and unwanted by society. As I finally took my makeup off, I couldn't help wondering how I would have treated 80-year-old me. Over the next 50 years, the number of elderly people in society will triple. Remember that the next time you're out and about and come across an elderly person. One day, it could be you.
A Homeless Man by Sam Brown.
Carrying a sleeping bag and wearing scruffy clothes, I headed for the spacious shop doorways where the homeless spend their nights. When I arrived there, I was shocked to see men and women already curled up in most of the doorways. I got into my sleeping bag in the large, well-lit doorway of a boutique, but I couldn't sleep. It wasn't just the biting cold, but I was constantly aware of people walking close to my head, and the hard stone floor dug into my shoulder and hip. I finally dozed off, only to be woken up at about 5 a.m. by the cleaners who arrived to wash the steps. As I walked, people avoided looking at me and crossed the road. I walked into a cafe to use the toilet, and I was angrily told I had to leave. At the public toilets, I couldn't believe the reflection I saw in the mirror. My eyes were red and puffy, my skin pale, and my hair was frizzy. I looked terrible. Later, at a soup kitchen, I got a free hot meal, and I spoke to people who were on the streets because of terrible debts or family breakups. 19-year-old Rob told me that he couldn't get off the streets because he had no official identity. I suddenly remembered how many times I had walked past young homeless people and thought, you should just get a job, forgetting that you can't be employed without an address and ID. My day as a homeless person has taught me how much the homeless need our help, not our judgment. These days, I donate money to a homeless charity and volunteer at a soup kitchen. Maybe you could do the same.